Take Action Real Estate Podcast, episode 41.
Welcome to the Take Action Real Estate Podcast, where we share our knowledge and experience to help you become a better investor. Coming to you from Columbus, Ohio, Brian and John talk about all topics real estate, share their successes and failures, as well as interview amazing people to help you avoid the pitfalls and find success on your real estate journey.
All right. Peter, great to have you here. How you doing today?
Yeah, doing really well. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So I was thinking back, trying to remember when we met the first time, and you might not remember this because I remember the time you and your business partner, you guys were doing deals, and I hadn't even done my first wholesale deal yet, and you were running a real estate meetup, and I know we met at, I think, the Panera off Bethel once,
right.
And then you had just gotten your new office. Where was that, off Broad? Or where was that?
Our first office was off Long Street in King Lincoln, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was right when you guys moved in there, you had one there as well. So,
yeah, we were running a meetup.com real estate investing group. That was really early days. We were still working as engineers, and we had probably only bought one or two properties at that point. But yeah, that's right.
So were you doing property management back then?
No. I mean, other than just managing our own, it wasn't even a glimmer of an idea in our mind at that point that we'd be, doing this professionally.
Really? And so was that your office, or you were working with a different broker at the time, right, too?
Yeah, so back in those days, well, I think that meetup was before we actually started the management company.
Oh, okay.
But what you're referring to, our first office in King Lincoln there on Long Street, yeah, so that was right after I had quit my job as an engineer.
Oh, okay.
And we had partnered up with Joe Peffer of Delicious Real Estate, super great guy, very experienced realtor here in Columbus. And in Ohio, you need to be affiliated with a licensed broker in order to manage property, as I'm sure you guys know. And so in order to do that, you can't just go out and get your broker's license. You need to have 2 years of full-time experience. So we got our licenses, our salesperson's licenses, hooked up with Joe, and then formed a property management team within his brokerage to get going.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's when I met you, because when I got my real estate license, I actually talked to Joe to join his brokerage.
Okay.
And I'd met you at that office.
Yeah.
And then I think John and I both came maybe some months later and met with you.
Yep.
And had a conversation about property management.
Yeah.
I think because we were just starting to buy rental properties at the time, or maybe
Because when we started out, we were just flipping houses and
Yeah.
basically
I guess my sales pitch wasn't very refined at the time, obviously.
Well, no, and I guess the most interesting part of that meeting that I guess that comes to my mind right now is you were kind of looking to put together kind of a Columbus guide to investing because you had so much data from managing so many properties, and I don't remember if that's why we met, or I remember sitting there and you were kind of running it by us, or and we talked about. I remember Brian and I thinking, "But that'd be awesome," because you had so much data from the range of locations and price points of properties that you were managing.
Yep.
And the idea I think you had was to kind of bring it all down to return on investment, right?
Yep. And because that's right, I remember talking about that with you because there's this saying, data is the new oil. You guys have probably heard this. And it's, as a property manager who manages hundreds of units in one city, you really have a lot of data on not only the rents, that's the one everyone thinks about, but things like, hey, what's the average repair costs on a 2-bedroom townhome in terms of like dollar per square foot on an annual basis? When you only own one or two properties, it's just not enough data there to give you a good sense or an ability to predict out to the future. But we manage probably 100 2-bedroom townhomes, and so we have access to 5 years of history of that, and we could probably tell you within a few cents, here's the dollar per square foot you should prepare to pay on an ongoing basis for repairs, and X for CapEx, and X for taxes and insurance, some of the other things you can look up. But yeah.
I remember Brian, you and I walking away from that meeting also because one thing you had brought up that we hadn't considered when we were evaluating rental properties to hold, we were always using a percentage of the rent.
Yep.
And I remember talking to you about that, and you, which makes complete sense, doesn't make sense to calculate that way.
That's
because a hot water heater costs the same whether the property rents for $2,000 or $600.
Yeah. And you'll still see me railing on that on things like Bigger Pockets. It's the number one thing I love to just slam people for because It's the very common accepted wisdom. Oh, you set aside 10% of the rent for maintenance. And exactly. I mean, rent's 700, rent's 2,000, and yet a bathroom costs what it costs to maintain. I mean, yeah, the finishes are going to be a little bit nicer in the higher rent unit, but it's going to be very minimal. So we like to use dollar per square foot for things like that.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think most people who are getting started, like we were when we were getting started, that's the only way that we knew how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Now we have enough data where we can just go back and look historically,
Right.
what is this going to cost? But very interesting. And I think Brian and I both, we respect you very much. I think you were managing up to 400 at one time, and I think you fired some of your clients to,
Yep.
for probably happiness and freedom. I don't know. We'll get into that later.
Yeah.
But you always tell it how it is too, whether it's bigger pockets or on a phone call or whatever. I feel like, you never sugarcoat it, and you don't have ulterior motives. You're just very straight and forward, and we definitely respect you for that. So
The property manager will give it to you straight. And I do this with prospective clients too, because we don't sell properties. So I won't help you buy or sell a property. We're 100% focused on management. So if you as a real estate investor call me and you say, hey, I'm looking at this property, I might tell you, we won't manage that if you buy it. I mean, you can buy it if you want, but I'm telling you, you're going to have a hard time. Your realtor's not going to tell you that, or they probably won't, because although I think a lot of realtors are great people, their incentive is volume. They need to do deals. They may need to feed their family that month, and your priorities are going to be secondary. You're their customer. But as a property manager, I'm going to be stuck with your property for potentially years on end. So I want you to get into a good investment, because if you get into a bad investment, eventually you're going to fire me. And by the way, probably blame me too. So I want you to be successful. And so we give the very unvarnished perspective when we get calls from current and prospective clients.
I certainly think that's wise. I mean, I know we've bought buildings that are managed by property managers, and I don't know if it's been your experience, but our experience was those tenants really don't like that property manager.
Yeah.
And the property manager really doesn't have any say in what repairs are done.
That's right.
Or, what CapEx is done, what the condition of the building
Nobody
is.
likes the manager. That's the saying in the business. I mean, the property owner who's our client, from their perspective, we're spending their money, and like, what if we don't get the rent they thought they were going to get? And the flip side on the tenants, they feel like if we don't answer the phone right away that, we're ignoring them, and we're the one that has to deliver the news about the rent increase and things like that. So, we accept that role, and we have some things in place to make both sides of that experience as positive as it can possibly be. But at a certain point, you just have to accept, hey, you're going to be the bad guy sometimes.
yeah.
And you guys know that too, because you're on at least half that.
Right. I was just going to say, buying properties with inherited tenants, that's always a big challenge, especially if they're managed by, mom and pop who own a couple, or a large management company. And it takes a long time to turn that around, because right off the bat, they're going to think, well, you're just like the last guy, and I didn't like him, and he didn't fix anything. And luckily, we have the benefit of being the manager and the owner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, typically, we don't always do it on purpose, but we'll go in and we'll fix things, first couple of weeks that we own it. So people see our maintenance guys out there, they see a new roof, they see units being turned over, and that usually helps a little bit. But still, I mean, our property manager, he struggles with that, and sometimes it takes 6 to 12 months to really gain the trust.
That's
of
exactly
those
right.
tenants.
Yeah, and we recommend to our clients, when they turn over a property to us with pre-existing tenants, we tell them, hey, let's not rock the boat on these new tenants. And sometimes the client will want to raise the rent, they want to get on a standard lease and all this. And I say, hey, let's let it set for a couple months. Let's let the tenants get familiar with our company. Let's let them get familiar with how to pay the rent, and show them that we are responsive to maintenance requests and questions. And then once they see that, hey, we're real people, we're legitimate, then maybe we can introduce, hey, by the way, we need to renew your lease. Because the goal is to reduce turnover. Turnover is the most expensive part of owning a rental property. So we at our company optimize for low turnover.
Gotcha. So let's go back from those meetups you were doing. You said that when you were running those, you had not even considered property management. So how active are you still in investing, and how did you kind of make that transition, or at least addition of property management?
Yeah. So way back then, my business partner and I both are engineers by training, and we worked as engineers for about 5 years each. And during that time, we bought our first couple investment properties. And, we looked at the time for a property manager as we grew, because we knew at least we thought we weren't going to be focused on management. We wanted to be focused on acquisitions and our day job. Well, we saw an opportunity because we couldn't find a property manager that we liked. And as we talked to other people, no one liked their property manager either. So we said, hey, this really seems like an opportunity. Let's see what it would take to open a property management company. So we put some plans in place, and about a year later, I quit my job, and that was 6 years ago now, and got licensed and started. And it was me in my apartment at the time, and just slowly over time built up a book of business.
So were you having people drop their rent checks off at your apartment?
No, by the time we got our first client, which took a few months, that was a nerve-wracking few months there. Once we got our first client, that was when we had found that office with our broker, Joe, and moved in there. So, yeah, I never collected a rent check at my apartment.
That's good.
Yeah.
So what was it about, I guess, property management? Obviously there's a gap in the market, but what about it appeals to you?
Well, there's a few things that I really enjoy about property management. First, I really love just the challenge of starting and growing a company in general. And property management is appealing because there's not a whole lot of startup capital at risk.
Yeah.
You really you need your license, you need a space to operate, and you just got to get some clients. You don't need to invest in a whole bunch of expensive infrastructure or equipment. So we were able to do it. It was a pretty low risk move because if it didn't work out, I could just go back and get, another engineering job. Property management I like to say it's an inch deep and a mile wide. It's almost the complete opposite of engineering. When I was working as an engineer, my boss would come in, hand me a new project, slap it on the table and say, I'll see you in a few months when it's done. And I would work on that nonstop, just that for months. Whereas in property management, I don't think I've ever worked on any one thing for more than about 90 minutes because it's just do this, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. And they're all interlocking. So it really gives me a chance to leverage my process and systems-based thinking that I cultivated as an engineer and is sort of innate in me and put that to work at scale. So we design systems and processes at our company to optimize for certain outcomes, and owning the company and being able to experiment with things and try things and really make our clients successful and provide a great experience for our residents. There's something about that really clicks with me. I never grew up thinking I'd want to be a professional property manager, and I really think of myself more as a business owner than a property manager, but it certainly dovetails nicely with a lot of what I like to do.
Yeah. I think I was a lot like you, where I really love the idea of growing a business.
Yeah.
And so, for years I was kind of just looking for what that thing was going to be. And then, we started off doing a little bit of wholesaling and mostly flipping. And it was like, it just, if you want to grow a business and you find something you're passionate about, it just clicks and you just, take off with it.
Yeah.
So what is your current role? Obviously you're probably managing the whole thing, but do you have a specific role on the client side or the tenant side or?
Yeah. So, my title is CEO, and some people laugh at that. Whatever. I think you should really think in terms of where you're going more than your current role. Even though we're only 10 people or so, I really do think of myself as the strategic. Like, you're responsible as the business owner and as the CEO for the vision. You're responsible for recruiting. On a day-to-day basis, I spend a lot of time on sales and marketing. So, going out, talking with prospective clients, coming up with new ways to reach our customers. And I also tackle just a lot of isolated activities. So I do a lot of the accounting still. I just kind of like doing it, the numbers thing from my engineering days. I tackle a lot of the hardest tenant and client questions or concerns. So I'm kind of like the top tier in terms of escalation on a lot of those things. If our team is having a tenant who's really just got them riled up, just really setting the direction and keeping everyone moving in the same direction. Now, I don't want to, I have a co-founder and he's an equal partner, Adam Rich, and so he does a lot too in sort of a complementary way to the things that I do.
Gotcha. And do you mind breaking down, the 10 employees that you have or the 10 people you have working in your office? What's the ratio?
Yeah. So we've got myself and the other owner. Then we've got 3 maintenance personnel, maintenance employees who are out taking care of the day-to-day issues at properties. They're direct employees of ours. Then we've got a leasing agent, so all she does is show properties, and a director of maintenance who handles all the incoming maintenance calls, and a property manager who's kind of like the middle tier management, dealing with a lot of the day-to-day tenant stuff, and an administrative assistant who's kind of in the reception area and takes care of a lot of the administrative work.
Right. I'm surprised you have 3 maintenance people. How many properties are you managing
We
now?
really should have like 6 maintenance people.
Really?
Yeah, we've got. It's always churning. I mean, it's hard to find great people in that role, and we really do have enough volume to support a lot more, and we're actively looking.
Yeah. Contractors are the one thing that
Yeah,
it's hard to find them and it's hard to keep them.
in this market, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for work. So
Yeah, I mean,
you're
if
competing.
if you run into a contractor who needs work, he's probably bad.
Right.
So that's a challenge.
Yeah. How many units are you, average month managing?
So as of today, we're at 350 units under
Okay.
management. Yeah, and we've been as high as 400.
So yeah, I remember few years ago you had kind of culled your list of
Yes.
clients. What was the so you were up to 400, and I think then at that time you got rid of you didn't renew contracts or whatever for about half of those, or what was the thought behind that?
Yeah, so we had there's a few things going on there. One, we had one really big client who had over 100 units with us, and the relationship started out great. It had deteriorated over time. What they were trying to do didn't match what our approach to property management is, and so things kind of broke down. And as they got bigger and bigger, it's just not a great idea to have that much of a percentage of your revenue tied to one company or one individual. So that, combined with the fact that the relationship was breaking down, we kind of mutually parted ways and decided it wasn't working out. And shortly thereafter, we recognized that as we were growing, we weren't as desperate for business as we had been. And so we really started raising our standards in terms of the types of properties that we would manage, the types of clients that we wanted to work with. So we, the old 80-20 rule, and it really was the case. 20% of our clients were causing 80% of the work and effort. There's a lot of clients who I never hear from them. I had to say this, but I almost forget their name because it just doesn't come up. I mean, they get their monthly deposit every month. They get their monthly statement. They get a check-in call from a team member on a quarterly basis. And unless something really goes wrong, I'm not in the loop on it. Whereas there's other clients who it's like almost every day something's getting bumped up to me, and it's like, okay, you're just not a good fit for our model or whatever it is. And so we recognize that in order to grow, we need to cull some of the, most challenging properties and clients. Yeah.
Now, have you found there to be any correlation between that type of owner and a specific asset type or a certain location or a property?
Not necessarily. I think property owners, and it's not necessarily that some of them are bad. I mean, some people are just jerks, and I don't want to work with people like that. And if that's how people are, I think that spans the whole spectrum. Mm-hmm. But the type of property management that we provide is very hands-off for the property owner. And so if you're looking for a property management company to really just take care of everything, that's what we offer. If you still want to be in control and you want to know everything that's going on and you want to have final say on every dollar that's spent, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what we offer. And so the more and more we learned about ourselves that that's how we wanted to be, the better we could get at sort of having those introductory conversations right up front and letting them know, hey, based on what you've told me, I don't think we're going to be a great fit. But to answer your question, I don't think it's any one property type. I think it's more just the mindset of the owner.
Okay, that makes sense. And so RO Partners, you guys have a little bit different management structure, at least pricing structure. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little bit? Because I think you guys have created that to benefit really both sides, to kind of align the goals, right?
Yeah, that's right. So we have there's a few things that are unique about us. One is that we don't charge a leasing fee, and I don't know that there's any other company in Columbus that has that model. And I'll talk about why that is in a second. The other thing is that we do charge a flat rate. Now we didn't pioneer that. There are other companies that are charging flat rates, but it's still not common. So what that means is the way a lot of people think about property management is the cost as a percentage of rent. So if you own a property that rents for $1,500, we look like a steal. If you own a property that rents for $700, you think we're highway robbery because our flat rate, it's right around $100. You can look it up. It's on our website. Mm-hmm. So that $100 a month flat rate, it works well. It attracts exactly the type of customer that we want to work with, who recognizes value, has a nicer property, and at the same time, we have enough margin that we can deliver a great result for them. Now, in terms of the leasing fee, I believe strongly that incentives are very important. And so when you pay a property manager a leasing fee, the problem is if they're having trouble filling your unit, the temptation may be, if they really need to get someone in there, they're just going to, the first person who walks through the door with a deposit, they're going to get them in there because they're going to get paid. And if the tenant moves out in 6 months, well, they get paid again to go find you a new tenant.
And to do the turn and to...
Exactly.
Yep.
And because turns or churn of tenants, it's really the most expensive and destructive part of owning a rental property. Anything you can do to reduce that is going to increase your bottom line. And so we wanted to align our incentives as the property manager with those of the owner, which is to keep good tenants in the property for as long as possible. So our incentive is, if we're having trouble filling a unit, we're not going to lower our standards, because if we place a bad tenant, it's on us to go find you a new tenant for free. So we're going to have a conversation with you about either the property condition or the asking rent or whatever we need to do to get that property attractive to a well-qualified tenant, rather than just getting someone in there.
Yeah. So how do you then? You said you had a leasing agent. How does that person get paid? Are they just like
They're just hourly.
An hour
Yep,
they're paid?
Just a full-time hourly, yeah. And I think if you treat people right, you set up the systems for them to be successful, and you really just you give them a lot of autonomy. We've had great results with that method, because, again, if you incentivize someone to fill units, they're going to fill units.
And they're going to fill them.
Yeah, they're going to fill your units real quick.
Yeah.
But who are they filling them with? Yeah. What are they telling those tenants? They might start making promises about, oh, yeah, we'll get that fixed up for you. Then you've got a customer experience problem.
Yeah, for sure.
So as a CEO, what is your biggest challenge as a property manager? I mean, I don't want you to say like managing employees, because that's a problem that everybody has.
Yeah.
I guess property management related.
Sure. The biggest challenge we have as a CEO of a property management company is that we've got two customers. We've got the property owners and we've got the tenants, and we're bound by law to act in the property owner's best interest, because we have a fiduciary duty to them. And as a real estate licensee and as a broker, that's part of Ohio law, is that there's a special relationship created between us and the property owner. So we need to act in their best interest, but at the same time, we have obligations to the tenant, not only legally per Ohio landlord-tenant law, but also because treating the tenant well is actually in the owner's best interest. So we have two different groups that we need to serve, and sometimes their interests are opposing. So if a tenant wants to pay the least amount of rent and get all the amenities they can as fast as possible, the owner wants to get the most rent and spend the least on maintenance. And so it's a challenge to kind of thread that needle and really do right by both groups and keep them both in the loop as far as what's happening. And what that means in practice is it's a big logistical task management process challenge, huge challenge. And that's what we spend a lot of time thinking about at our company, is how can we make this system run smoothly and consistently.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, you've got people that are surfing the web, trying to look for a place.
Yep.
And they reach out to you, and one of the challenges we sometimes have is those leads kind of get overlooked for a day or two or three, and then
yep.
So you want to have someone that's on top of that, someone that's willing to just reach out even hourly, check the leads and see what we're doing. And so even for us, as we manage our own properties, that's we can certainly connect with.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are
logistical.
You're big now. I mean, how many units are you up to?
100,
do you share that?
Yeah, 130 rental
Okay.
units.
Yeah, so that's a serious undertaking. You know the pain
Yeah.
that is, listing a property for rent, and even just the day-to-day maintenance. You're probably getting multiple per day at this point.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah.
One of our strategies is when we buy a property is we try to go in and fix everything as we can, rehab it as to a decent quality, and to kind of mitigate all, maintenance issues for
That's
the
the
next
right thing to
few
do.
3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
And so we don't get a ton of maintenance calls because that's our strategy. Where we get the most of them are typically from, tenants that are already in place when we buy. And that's where we get a lot of our complaints from other tenants. So we try to sort through that we made the mistake last year. We bought some buildings out in Heath, and we didn't do your strategy where let's let the tenants stabilize for a couple of months to get used to us. We did not do that, and that didn't really work out too well for us. But 12 months later, the buildings are stabilized. It's almost full. I think we have one unit that's not yet rented at market rate. And so was a learning curve for us.
Yeah.
And definitely the next multifamily purchase we make, we're not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. You live and learn. I mean, when we started, I had no experience in property management, and it was, hey, come let me manage your property. I've never done it before. Yeah. I mean, other than the ones we owned. But that's something you'll never forget now.
Yeah.
And we've had that experience times many hundreds of units.
Are you guys still active? Are you buying your own rental property still? What's your strategy for investing?
We would love to. My business partner and I own, I think it's like 7 properties. It's not a lot. It's not a big percentage of our portfolio by any means. We'd love to buy more. The problem is we got started buying in 2008. And so we really got spoiled in terms of purchase price and return on investment. So everything we look at today, it's just we don't have the stomach for it. So we're kind of hoping, as everyone is, for the market to turn a little bit, provide some more buying opportunities. I think also we're the things we own are single family and like duplexes. I think our next purchase will probably be something a lot bigger now that we have, obviously the management capability. We've got a little bit more capital we can put to work. So we'd love an opportunity to get in on a deal, but we're very conservative by nature. And so we spend a lot of time focusing on the management company. And so we don't have, 4 hours every day to spend digging up leads for potential properties to buy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, the market's definitely tight right now.
So you guys certainly have mastered this. I remember hearing a little bit about it when we last met. Your system that you have in place for acquisitions is truly impressive. It's the thing that everyone talks about doing, but no one actually does. But you guys actually did it.
Yeah, it's been kind of the cornerstone of our business since we started, is finding off-market deals. And I mean, I don't even know that we've ever bought a single family off of the MLS. I know we've bought a couple multifamilies, and even those were like backup offers where the first offer fell through, and obviously the other one was $1 million rehab that nobody wanted. So
I think that the one that you did by Whitlow, was that on the MLS?
Whitlow.
So
I had worked really hard to forget that one.
you like to remind me of the ones that I buy that didn't always turn out.
You know what? I lost $1,000 on that house, and it was one of the first ones I had ever done, and it was invaluable, right? Because the experience and knowing where I did want to invest, knowing where I didn't want to invest became very clear to me once I bought a property.
Yeah,
a location
remember
that
thinking,
I did not want to.
I think like the day before you closed or something, there was a shooting.
Oh boy,
a block
Where's
away.
that street?
No, it was across the street.
There's a school literally
near
right
Black
across
Lake
the street.
Estates.
Okay.
43232. It was right across the street at the school. I was just shooting, and I was like,
boy.
Can I still back out of this? Or what? And then I bought it, and it got broken into like 2 or 3 times in like the 6 weeks that I owned it.
Oh man.
But hey, that was 5 years ago or so. So
when I first moved here, that was one of the things I was looking for, is how do I get into this market? Because I was doing some investing in Lexington, where I was from, and I met John, and we did a couple of deals together. And at some point, I got to the place like, if I'm gonna make a go of this, I have to figure out. And the market was, you could start. This was probably 2014. Even then, you could feel that the market was getting tighter. There were more and more people jumping into this. And my thought was, man, I've really got to figure out how to get deal flow. Like, acquisitions is the key.
Yep.
Because you can you can find contractors, you can find real estate agents to list houses, and all the other pieces. The linchpin or sort of the key to being successful is finding deals that you can buy at a good price.
Yeah.
And John was getting really good at that. And so that was when I sat down and proposed. I remember talking to my wife about, hey, what do you think about proposing, like going into business with John? And she's like, oh, I don't know.
She didn't like it at all.
I don't know that she didn't like it. She's just a little bit more fearful. Like I was like, let's take the risk. You know, what could happen? We're flipping houses. We're not, worst case scenario in 4 months, we sell everything and we're done.
Yeah, I remember having a similar conversation with my wife because it wasn't too long after we got engaged that I quit my engineering job. I said, hey, I got a little update for you. I quit my engineering job. Remember that awesome, engineering fiance? Yeah, actually, he's just some dude who working in his apartment.
Yep.
But it worked out.
That's funny. I was going to say something else. I forget. I was going to ask you about your Airbnbs. I saw you posted a video recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know, are the Airbnbs, do you manage them for other people?
We don't.
Or you own them yourselves?
We own just one. I live in a big old house on Bryden Road in Old Town East, and it was divided into multiple units many years ago. And so we turned one of those units into an Airbnb. I think it was over almost 2 years ago now. So we've just been separate from the business, just my wife and I run it. And so we've just been Airbnb-ing it out for a couple years. And we had rented it normally for a few years before that. So I was able to see what we were able to get on a monthly basis for a standard rental and then what we were able to get through Airbnb. So
what was or do you mind sharing what the difference or the increase on that is?
It's almost twice as much that you can get per month when you Airbnb it out.
Your net.
That's your gross.
Okay.
Yeah, your net is not nearly as attractive because you have to pay cleaners and there's a lot of overhead. You've got to maintain the listing, constantly be checking the prices, messaging all the guests, getting them checked in and out, managing the cleaning people, which you guys probably know is practically a full-time job. So yeah, it's for us, it works because we're in the building. My wife kind of runs it now. Mm-hmm. But it's not something we offer. I think there is a company in Columbus that will do that. Yeah. But we don't.
Gotcha. Yeah, we had Sarah and Nick on from Nesters, and they were great guests, but that's kind of their bread and butter. And yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. I think my head was kind of spinning by the time the podcast was done with them because, from the staging, buying furniture, staging, and like you said, just the constant maintenance.
You're running a hotel.
Yeah.
It's just spread out and it's slightly different, but the expectations are similar for the guests.
Right.
And now I guess the city's starting to take notice.
They are, yeah. Then that's what I did a little video on, like
fee or something.
Yeah, it's actually not bad. There's a fee and there's some things you have to do.
Now, in certain neighborhoods, can they basically nix it and?
Well, it's city by city. So, for example, my whole video I made was just on the city of Columbus. Now we've got like city of Westerville, city of Upper Arlington, city of Gahanna, city of Grandview Heights, excuse me. And so, yeah, all those individual cities could make their own rules.
I didn't know of a neighborhood like Victorian Village or something where they have like historical.
Oh, I'm not sure.
If they could just say, yeah, we're not going to do this. We're our own society or whatever it is.
It's possible a historic district could. Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting.
So it sounds like going forward, you're looking maybe hopefully to buy a little bit bigger property with more units.
That's right. Yeah.
What about some goals for your property management? Where do you see that going?
Yeah. So we've recently sort of turned our attention back to growth. For a while there. We were very, very focused on operations and on establishing sort of our ideal client profile and property profile. Now that I feel like we've got a really good handle on those things, we're ready to hit the accelerator again. So we just signed a pretty big contract with a marketing firm. We're going to be spending some dollars on that front. We also engaged a sales consultant to really iron out and define our sales process, which up until now, I've been doing most of the sales and I just kind of do what comes naturally. But you got to get that stuff written down and documented so that when we bring someone in, they have something to work off of. So the goal is really growth. We've got certain unit counts that we want to hit by certain times. And we're looking at some other options too, sort of like complementary business units to what we're doing right now, which is scattered site property management.
One of the things we've been talking about here is data points or numbers for each staff. Like how many hours is it from the time a lead comes in to the time they're contacted back? Or how long between a maintenance call someone calls and says, hey, I got this problem, till we have assigned the task to somebody and reached out, do you track those kind of things? What does that look like? What are some of your data points that you really look at daily?
We do track a lot of data, and I think I saw on your first newsletter that you highlighted the traction book, which is part of the EOS system.
I was going to say that what Brian just said is from, I think, the data component chapter of that book.
Yeah, that's right. And I read traction myself about 4 years ago, set it aside, never thought about it again until about 3 months ago when I, for whatever reason, just decided to read it again, and it totally struck me in a whole different light. And so we're in the process of rolling out the EOS system at our company as well. So yes, we do. We're just now establishing our scorecard and some of the other data metrics that we look at. Now, in terms of response time on maintenance requests and leads, we don't get down quite to that granular of a level because my feeling now we're at a bigger volume at this point. We've got some dedicated people. So my feeling is like, as long as we hire the right people, we empower them, we treat them well, and we provide them the tools they need to do their job, I kind of leave it to them on being responsible for getting back to people in a timely fashion and things like that. We are tracking a lot of higher level metrics like what's our revenue per unit, what's our occupancy look like, what's our churn ratio, meaning if we start the year with 100 clients, how many of those 100 leave during that year. Churn is actually pretty high for property management companies, and it's very expensive. We look at closing ratio. So if I get 100 leads, how many of those actually turn into customers? Mm-hmm. So we spend a lot of time looking at those things. And what I'm realizing is and you guys are probably the same way. You're using like 5 different software pieces. Now, I know you're moving a lot of stuff.
Maybe only 6 or 7.
Yeah. I know you're working with Podio, which I think is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's something that we looked at. But we've started experimenting with Airtable, which is like an online database, to try and get our data into one environment so that we can pull a lot more useful metrics out. Because right now, we've got our property management software where a lot of stuff's in Excel. Now we've got stuff in Airtable. We're using Trello. We're using Slack. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about what can we get rid of? How can we consolidate? And because the less tools you're using, the more data you can pull out of them.
What's the property management software that you're using?
We're using Buildium.
You're using Buildium.
Yeah.
So
what about you guys?
We use Buildium.
Okay, yeah.
And we found that it's got some pretty, like the user interface, they've really been working on improving it.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to use.
They're really excited about their new tenant website.
Which is a little bit better than the last one.
Yeah, I guess.
Where it falls down, I feel like, is on the accounting piece a little bit.
Okay.
From our perspective of being the owner and running our books. So we run QuickBooks and Buildium, and Buildium is basically where we do rent collection, and we don't really keep track of the cost of maintenance in Buildium.
Okay.
So we've been, plus we use a different solution for incoming leads. We use Podio for like tenants that want to find a place. So we're trying to look around. Is there a place that consolidates all this?
Yeah. And at the scale you guys are getting to and the scale that we're getting to, nothing is going to solve your problems. I have a saying I came up with, which is that there's no panaceas in property management. There's no one size fits all. There's no golden bullet that's just going to solve. So we are trying to build our own sort of separate solution for a lot of that stuff. We're going to keep using Buildium for accounting only. My thinking these days is that anything with a $, I'm going to keep doing it in Buildium. But for things like exactly leads, things like customer service requests, things like, just all the other workflow type tasks, Buildium is just not set up to do that. I mean, if your process matches exactly what they've got going on, you're fine. But no one's does. Everyone's got their own little way of doing it. And it's a big challenge. I think of Buildium as property management software 1.0, where before Buildium, it was almost like pen and paper and file folders and stuff. Before our generation, really. But if we would have worked at big property management offices, we would have seen that. And I think Buildium and a lot of the peers of Buildium were like the first real attempt to digitize all of that and make it at a web-based platform. Maybe you could call them like version 2.0, because I think version 1.0, there's a lot of desktop-based software that did that. But what the industry really needs is like the next generation, which kind of takes it one click up above just receiving rent. Like, yeah, of course you can receive rent. Of course you can make online payments. I love they're still bragging about that as if we haven't had it for like 10 years. It's like, yeah, guys, we can pay rent online. Okay, great. There needs to be the next step up, which is workflow, it's tasks, it's performance reports, it's a lot of the stuff you were talking about with how long did it take to get back to somebody. That's what we need.
We're in the process of doing a trial with one of the the next step up in price and features. There are, and I think there's a handful of them that are sort of up at that more expensive, broader price point. I think what we're looking at, it's a step up from Buildium. The user interface isn't near as pretty. Yeah. But it has a lot more features and it's fully customizable. And at least our bookkeeper, she's starting to really like it from the bookkeeping perspective, and it has how it interfaces with the tenants and the maintenance requests, and so all of that will be not double booked in Buildium and in QuickBooks. And
the thing I struggle with Buildium the most is that it's just a silo. There's no way to get data in or out of there. So whatever you move to, I would urge you to make sure that
this has a fully customizable reporting system. You can take any of the data in it and present it in any way.
Is there a way to get data into it though, like through an API?
Yes, they have API.
That's cool. Yeah, that's what you need.
Have you tested any other property management softwares?
Not extensively. I mean, I keep up with it a little bit just because I'm in the industry, but we haven't like tried. I feel like whatever we move to, it'd be kind of a sideways step. It wouldn't be like the leap that we really need, especially with where we're going. Yeah. And once you've got all these staff who are already used to what you got going on, it's painful.
That's the challenge.
I was going to say the investment in time. It's almost like a risk reward. Like you find a solution that maybe a little bit better, but you have to find, number one, you have to find the time, and then you have to pay an entire staff to learn it, and then you have to hope that they all, like whatever module they're working with. We tried to go to Appfolio, spent a month and a half or so.
A fair amount of money.
Spent thousands of dollars, and at the end, it just couldn't do what we needed it to do, and it's like we had wasted so much time and effort and headaches.
Yeah, I feel like even that one, that was a little bit of deception on their part. I'm not saying that exactly, but I feel like they presented it in a way that when we asked the questions, maybe there was a miscommunication. Like we were expecting it to do this, they said it could do that, but when we got in it, it actually couldn't do that.
They have a very aggressive sales team. Yeah, I mean they get a hold. They found my cell phone somehow. They're very aggressive.
If only their implementation team was as aggressive.
Yeah.
Awesome. What else? Do you have anything else that you want to say, Peter? Or
just trying to see what you guys wanted to. Anything else we wanted to chat about?
How about the market? I know you kind of hinted that, the investors, some of us are kind of hoping that there's maybe a little correction so we can pick up some more discounted properties. Where do you think we're at in that curve?
We gotta be near the top. I just can't see how we're not. I mean, if you take a 50-year view of Columbus specifically, I think you're going to be fine whatever you pay for a piece of property, if that's your time horizon. If you're trying to flip or you're buying something for 3 or 4 years and you want to 1031 it out, something like that, I would be pretty cautious about paying anywhere near retail prices right now. I mean, if you look around campus, a lot of the big time, long time landlords are selling their stuff right now, which is a little unsettling. I own some campus property, but you wonder what they know, because these are guys that have been holding for 30 years and now they're selling. So if that
they're
doesn't,
also in a different age bracket.
Well,
too.
that's true.
So,
that is true.
They're in the time where they're trying to wind down, and maybe there is a little bit to, hey, we're really high right now. I mean, I sold my campus properties in Lexington this last year, and we did really well because it's a high market.
There's certainly a lot of people willing to pay a lot of money for property right now. And we're, as buyers, we're competing with them, and a lot of them are out of state, and a lot of them are even international. And I worry about them. because they call me almost every day. They say, hey, I'm an investor in California. I've heard a lot of good things about Columbus. I found you on Bigger Pockets. And what are the good areas? And I'm going to be buying property. And I worry about those people because they don't have experience. They're probably, whatever they read on Bigger Pockets, and they're just going to get into something where they can barely make the mortgage payment, let alone, the upkeep of the property and everything else.
Yeah. I mean, Columbus has a little bit higher tax than some areas, and tax really, I feel like, eats up a lot of cash flow.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember moving from Lexington to here, and my house in Lexington was bigger than my house here, and my taxes were like a quarter.
Yeah.
Like I was paying $1,500 a year. Here I'm paying $6,000. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is expensive, especially once you get out of the city of Columbus. Any of the nicer suburbs, it's dramatic. So what I tell people is, don't be too eager. I mean, if you've got money and you want to be in real estate, that's awesome. But there's nothing saying that you need to get into a deal right now.
Right.
Like, just because you found the best deal that's out there right now doesn't mean it's a good deal. It just means that's the lowest price available in 2019.
Yeah.
So.
Right. Good. I always like hearing different people's opinion on the corrections. Some people, I was talking to somebody last week who was here in the office, and he was like, oh no, we're at least 5-10 years away from that.
Oh wow. Maybe he must know something I don't.
I don't know. I think he was just speculating. Well, anyway,
buy for the long term. Basically.
Yeah, I think the long-term prospects of the city are great. So if you're going to be here and you're going to own property for 50 years, you're fine. I wouldn't even worry about it in the least. As long as you can net out at zero in terms of your cash flow, the tax benefits you're going to achieve through investing in real estate, you're paying down the principal, and you're benefiting from appreciation. Yeah. You just need to be able to make the monthly payments in the meantime.
Right. Do you have any idea, like, during the last recession, what percentage of, I guess, rental rates, what was the percentage decrease in those? Do you have any idea what that number is? Because I'm, like what you just said, I was just thinking that as long as you can make the mortgage payment and break even, then the market should come back. But what should people, expect for a correction? Is it 20%, 30%? I mean, how much of a buffer should they have in there?
I actually don't know, because we got in right after that.
Yeah.
I don't think rents came down that much, partially because so many people were losing their home that they were needing to rent, and it was driving up demand for rentals.
Right.
I don't remember hearing much from the old timers about a big drop in the rents. I know they were flat for a while for sure. The thing about rent prices that I find frustrating is, you hear all the time in the media, oh, rents in Columbus climb another 2.5% this year. And I'm like, okay, yeah, because they're building a bunch of new luxury apartments. What about the same store rents? What I call same store rents. Like, for the same apartment building that was here 10 years ago, what would that graph look like in terms of the rent over time? Forgetting about all the new luxury stuff. Because in my opinion, from what we see, rents are flat or even a little bit down for the same property in the last 2 to 3 years, even though the average rent in Columbus is going up, because they're building a bunch of new luxury stuff. So I haven't found a good source for that data, but that's just.
I've always thought that Columbus, and I know that Columbus took a hit during the last recession on value at least, but I've always thought that we were kind of in our own bubble because we have so many different industries here.
Yeah.
Whereas, I came from up, Northwest Ohio towards Toledo, and obviously Detroit and Cleveland all got hit much harder than Columbus did, where Columbus has so many different headquarters for so many different industries. I just, not that we're not going to see some impact from that, but I feel like it's not going to be as great as at least other Ohio cities.
Yeah, and that's what happened during the Great Recession. Columbus was somewhat insulated. I remember hearing that the property values didn't drop quite as much as they did in a lot of other comparable cities. So,
and that varies neighborhood to neighborhood too, I think. So
yeah.
I
really feel like rents are low relative to property values right now, and I'm curious that if we don't accelerate our building of new properties quite a bit here soon, I think rents are going to start to climb rapidly because we're just not building enough to keep up with demand.
Right.
For whatever reason, rents are slow to climb here, but eventually supply and demand is just going to crush it.
Yeah.
Which is surprising considering how much building is going on around here.
Yeah, but they say it's not nearly enough.
Yeah, I know they do. But you
it's
drive
hard to
around
believe.
270 and you see,
I know.
enormous multifamilies going up everywhere. But
yeah.
Well, anyway, if you don't have anything else, we'll wrap this thing up. But we've really enjoyed having you, and I think we got a lot of good information out of it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me. It was a fun conversation.
If someone wants to reach out to you, how do they connect with you?
Yeah, they could definitely go to our website, rlpmg.com, stands for RL Property Management Group. You can find me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on there. We just started putting out some YouTube videos geared toward investors. We just did one on security deposits in Ohio. So if you're wondering what to do with your tenant's security deposit, we cover all that. So yeah, you can find me. I'm out there, happy to chat with investors and folks in the industry.
Awesome. We'll go ahead and put all that in the show notes, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, guys.